Good morning.
My gosh. All right. So it's just done. Redirecting to Facebook Live. Here we go. All right, you guys. I just wanted to say hi to everyone this morning. It's been a long week, month, year, and we're only halfway through. Anyways, this is Jennifer Hough, and we are live on Agents of Awakening. And I just wanted to share that, we've had some pretty powerful conversations on Agents of Awakening with my friend Valerie Shepard. And last night we had one with Valerie Shepard and Joel Adifon. And I'm calling him the UG instead of the OG because, man, did he have it going on last night. Wow. So I hope you guys take the time to go and watch on facebook.com/Agents of Awakening. Use the hashtag Agents of Awakening because we're all being catalyzed to a new level of clarity and commitment. I'm actually going to take today myself to really get clear on who I'm being rewired to be and the message that I'm being rewired to bring because of what's going on in the world right now. So know that that's normal. Sometimes it feels very off-putting and a little floaty. So I know you, Monisha, have never felt that way. You've never felt redirected by life ever. And so let me tell you a little bit about my genius friend. Oh, Monisha, I'm so glad you're here with us today. You're like the perfect person for all of our souls, honestly. And so let me get formal for a second. Got to put on my formal face. So her career in community and economic development, which took her from neighborhoods in the inner city of Philadelphia. See, I didn't even know that. To rural villages in northern India. I did know that. In the corporate world, she works with federal organizations to improve workplace processes, communications, and facilitate group discussion. She's also one of the most humble people you will ever meet. Because honestly, just an incredibly well-educated human being, as well as the work that you've done is is transformative of systems that might affect millions of people every day, and we don't even know that you are involved. So after flight school, which is of course the leadership program that we teach here at the Wide Awakening, she discovered she had always listened to her surroundings through her whole body. Over the last 2 years, she deepened her ability to assist people with listening to their bodies as a guide. And she does some pretty cool work. She actually demonstrated in a couple of our retreats to great appreciation of our participants. She is trained in interplay, and she's a certified sacred depth coach. Uh, she does workshops, she does facilitation, and so on. And I think really ultimately we all follow our instincts and we find the people that are perfect for us. But I know you will probably end up feeling the same way I do about Manisha, which is uh, a deep level of respect and love. So, Miss Manisha, your journey has been quite something. Tell everybody like where you grew up and what your family was like. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Um, so I was born in India. I was born in Delhi,
Mm-hmm.
and I grew up in a very traditional Indian family.
Yes.
Um, so many aspects of which really informed me, shaped my roots, grounded my roots.
Yeah.
Had a couple of ping pong experiences with being shuttled to America, being shuttled back to India. Um,
How was that?
well, so it's interesting you asked that, but I guess there's just I would just say the normal thing of kids, especially when you are like 4 and 5 and 6 and 7,
Right.
and like you've adapted in one place, and then all only just to find out that you're, having to go back and then like finding that all again. So,
Oh,
um,
I understand. Same thing. We moved, I think, 10 times in 13 years. So I get it.
yeah, and I would say, so I would just say, from a life perspective, the initial separation, because my parents were not involved in the first time I was sent to India, that was a major life wounding, physically, even, like energetically, physically in my
Yeah.
body. And I didn't even understand what was, how much that was present for me until even like until really my early 30s.
Mm,
Um, so yeah, I mean, but the other thing I just want to really interject about that is it really, when you talk about my journey, I really grew up in America, and I really grew up in the contrast between um, a very traditional Indian family and the realities of America in the 70s and 80s.
mm, mm-hmm,
That was kind of when I was, yeah.
mm-hmm. And so there's, okay. So we can begin to start to feel your experience, because it wasn't just, let's not, let's underscore the difference between mine moving around 10 times in 13 years, which was difficult. But if you put on top of that a complete culture shift, and you're 4 or 5 years old and you're going from culture to culture to culture to culture, and they're completely different cultures. One where you're completely accepted, you're part of a community,
Oh,
right? And then all of a sudden you're thrown into a place where A, you're trying to figure out how you fit, but B, it's like you're not sure if you're ever going to fit because of the atmosphere that surrounds you.
yeah. I mean, so I guess for me, the way that showed up is twofold. Like
Hmm.
basically, regardless of where I was living, because it was really right around six that I experienced both of the worlds,
Hmm.
in India and America. And outside of any of the observations my little body, was making at that time, I
Yeah.
would I would just say that the real thing was that they're really, I didn't, by that time I was starting to understand that maybe something was different about me, and I didn't really have the words to communicate um what I was seeing or what I was feeling, or even if I did have the words, I was very sensitive to the ridicule, that I was getting,
Hmm.
and really kind of shut down my voice. But then on top of that, cultural stuff is the patriarchy, which is a very common experience for Indian girls, and you're really raised without a sense of sovereignty in very fundamental ways, which so many of my American peers could never even taste or touch or smell. I mean, it was just so invisible
Can you
barrier
give
of
it?
separation.
Can you give an example, because people hear that and they're like, I can feel people saying, because I mean, we all grew up in some form of patriarchy, right? And I'm not saying that from a like men are bad point of view. I'm really not. I
Oh
love
no, me
I love
neither.
my
I
my
love every
masculine.
single
Yeah.
there's no judgment at
Yeah,
all.
it's a
It,
systemic thing. It's not a like your husband's adorable, my husband's adorable. That's not what it's about. But it's just like an underlying. It's like a whiff. It's like a s- it's like an underlying
well,
kind
let
of
let me
below the surface
explain it.
fabric.
Yeah, let me
Yeah,
explain it this way.
yeah,
So, I had my experiences here, right? And I was living a pretty average middle class life as a kid, going to public school, like just having a regular little life if you looked at it on the
yeah,
surface.
yeah.
When I uh, when I was doing development work in India, one of the most profound moments I had was sitting on the ground in a gathering of village women with these community organizers. And the community organizers suddenly turning to me going, oh, I mean, I'm 23, 24 years old at this
Sure,
time.
sure. Yeah.
And I'd already been in community development in Philadelphia. So I was coming from a body of people and work. But he turns to me and he's like, Monisha, we want you, we want you to speak about your experiences. And, I'm looking at these women's eyes and I know exactly what they're thinking. Like, how could someone like me have any connection, anything relevant to offer them? Um, and what ended up happening, I told my story of the choices I had to make and of how the ultimate cutoff for being an Indian girl is kind of being excommunicated, from your family and from your culture. And I lived in so much fear of that.
Mm.
And that was the thing when I explained the
So wait,
trade-offs.
wait. I want to make sure that I understand. So what, and therefore, hopefully everyone else can understand. What I'm hearing is, and tell me if this is correct, what I'm hearing is there were expectations of probably education, probably how you married, probably, like a
Who you
million,
married, when
who
you
you met,
married,
right, that kind of thing.
um,
Yep.
what you studied, why, you know,
What status you got to in your job, or what it would, all of these things. And if you don't, so I just want to hear this, if you do, it's different because you might have that in your family, whatever color of the rainbow you are or culture you come from. But there's a thing, almost, you're going to be excommunicated from your tribe if you veer off that expected path. And so what informs your choices instead of your instincts, and this is what's so crucial in Agents of Awakening, what's informing your choices, if I hear you right, is actually your car is getting driven by the fear that you're not going to belong anymore, or people aren't going to approve of you anymore that are important to you. And it's like you're going to be almost like identityless, right? Like, what's my identity if I don't fit in with my
well, it
also
just goes to the
love and
crux of the human experience of
right,
not belonging.
right.
Um, And I would just say that when they realized that that was the thing that made the women just look, they all got up, they ran up to me and they called me sister. They all wanted to know how could they, you know, have space and have space and um, be equal
Mm.
because the whole thing when you experience life from this place is you just want to be part of the equation, and you don't want to diss anything about where you're from. You have so much love and respect for every single thing, and yet you don't understand why you're not legitimized, as a viable part of the whole. And in these communities, that's all the women was saying, like use me, like this is my life too, this is my children's life too, like why can't I just be part of the equation?
So let's everybody just stop for a second. I just want you to breathe that. I need to breathe it through. Just breathe that for a second. Just breathe what that means, because everyone has had the experience of feeling like, I just want to belong. I just want to fit in. And I will share this and then we'll get to this topic, Monisha. Um, that underlying feeling of needing to fit in is an interesting one, because at this level of fitting in, we're taught that we need to fit in with certain people, or we need to not rock the boat or shake the tree. But if you're actually an agent of awakening, you actually are different. So, and in fact, I might even add that everyone's an agent of awakening, but there are certain people that are called more, even more like right now they're being called really deeply to build a new bridge. You literally have to be willing to not fit in to be an agent of awakening. You can't pioneer a change if you're gonna agree with everyone and stay the same. You know what I mean? Like it's very difficult to cause change when so but what if the belonging is the belonging with like the whole human tribe as a unique expression of God, and that the uniqueness, the unique tribe is the tribe that we all really could belong to. Everyone can belong to the tribe of unique. We're all unique and different and beautiful expressions, pieces of the puzzle of heaven on earth who form a symphony. But as long as we're trying to stay the same, it's like we're not playing our instrument to the best of our ability. And Monisha, you have a very unique experience because although you and I could talk for days, we really could. We could do a whole series on this, I'm sure. But one of the things that I noticed one of the ways you're unique, which in the history of flight school, I had never seen someone so this way, like so much. And when you came into it, when you came to the realization of how, can you kind of talk us through how you came to the realization that how you are is you feel, not just empathic, it's like physiological for you. Everything is, which is why you was part of probably the reason you had such a problem talking about stuff when you were little, because you're, it's like a visceral kinesthetic feeling for you when something's off. Can you talk about that a little bit, like how you came to that realization and what you've done with what you've seen since?
How I came to the realization that that's how I
Yeah,
take in
yeah,
information.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to just very tinily give a shout out to the last piece of the conversation and just really honor that if it hadn't been for the people in Philadelphia,
Mm,
especially the African American community, the children I worked with and the families I worked with, and the real strength I found of a whole people who lived in shadows and who experienced illegitimization of their lived experience and had expectations to validate, what society was putting on them while being denied their own lived experience. I just want to just say I could not have made any of my brave choices. I could not have made the choice to go into community economic development. I couldn't have made the choice to give my heart to a man that helped me get across the world. I couldn't have done any of that without knowing that that was there. So,
beautiful. Thank you.
yeah. But yeah, so, first of all, I would just say that on the very last day of flight school, you looked at me and with this big, like, and you were like, oh my God, you're like, your body is a guide. And, you know, that very day was kind of a cataclysmic day in my life because it was the last day of flight school. And I went back to my work where I'd been in a dead end job for like 20 years. And literally, the universe started making it incredibly uncomfortable for me to stay in my job.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I always, when I write about these pieces of my life, like, from that first time in my 20s when, I was disowned by my family. And then like, you just feel like the earthquake, you feel the earth breaking up under your feet, right? That which held you. And by the end of that year, I ended up having to leave. I just ended up having to leave. It got very uncomfortable and just, so that was that. And I, and what I just really take a breath on is that opened up because I knew that there was something stirring in my heart and that I had to follow it, but that's all I knew. And I am a normal human being. I'm worse because I didn't have any of that confidence in my being from being little. Nothing ever got validated for me in terms of how I operate. I was filled with so much anxiety. But what had been stirring in my heart is because I'd been so unhappy in my work, I ended up doing all these activities outside. And part of that had been taking this improv class. intro to improv.
Perfect.
And I ended up having a physical reaction halfway through class every time I went. Like my sinuses would clear up. And I was like, maybe that's something. What the heck is that? And I had like perpetual congested sinuses at the time.
Huh.
And so then that kind of led to all these other external activities like family constellation,
Good stuff.
the FlexAware, this gentleman in DC, moving meditations, this other woman. And I just began to see like, whoa, my body kind of has a lot of information. What is going on and where is all this coming from? So even though I left my job, I didn't have a plan and I didn't have anything. But the second I made the decision to leave, Interplay really came running to embrace me. A leadership training program kind of opened up, and I'm at the kind of, I don't want to say tail end, but kind of over the halfway mark with that. And Interplay is a movement and storytelling and voice improvisation form. And it gave me the medium to understand all the nonverbal ways that I was receiving information, and it helped me gain confidence that this is a real thing because it's happening, it's here, like this is how I work. So that it's just amazing to finally step into and embrace my own operating system. And in terms of how it feels, I would just say it's kind of like that scene from Empire Strikes Back with Yoda, because it's like what you're really imbibing is the isness of the moment.
Right.
And
Right.
yeah.
Oh, so good. So Monisha, I love so just to highlight a few of the brilliant things Monisha just shared. There's something so when we express, we look at people's faces. When we express, we watch their hands. When we express, we see whether they're leaning forward or leaning back. When we express, and if you look at communications experts, they all say that you actually get more communicated from what happens to the physical body and the inflections that come from the voice. Then it's almost more important how they're communicating rather than what. I mean, it is so crucial. And some people actually experience the world. There are scales, uh, there are different types of people. So our uniqueness is not just about whether you have curly hair or whether you have straight hair, whether you have brown eyes or blue eyes, whether you're tall or short, whether you have, mocha skin or pasty white skin like me. It really, it's there are also the ways we process the world makes us unique. And what Monisha is describing for those, and I really want you to hear it if this is you, it's so important to understand that some people process the world kinesthetically, like everyone does, but some people, that's their main deal, and most of the world doesn't process it to the degree through their body that you do. Everyone does, Monisha, but to the degree that you do, that's why that last day of flight's gone like, oh my, I just totally saw you. Happens a lot on the last day. It's crazy. I don't know why that happens so much, but
Well, it's why on the first day that I showed up, I always held myself so apart. I was so scared of groups. I always felt in danger of being
yes,
misunderstood. My whole experience was having so much sorrow in my body from just having that
oh,
barrier,
yeah, not being seen,
not being
and
seen, and even if I expressed myself, being
yes,
completely not no context and being so misunderstood.
it's like not being heard, but because the way you process is physical, so like people aren't hearing physically, they're hearing with their ears, they're looking for the language this way, but with
Right,
you it's
right.
more this way.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
it's very interesting, and so just everybody, again, let's just breathe this through for a second, because as Angela just commented, it's like unique processors. Do you understand how many ways we can be unique, you guys? And the thing is, the world doesn't change. The world around Monisha will not change. It never was going to change unless she actually became this, like understood herself and was okay with being this way and got seen. Now, so Monisha, this is what I would love to hear, because what happens now as this person that you now know yourself to be, and of course I'm always discovering myself, you're always discovering, like we humbly, just go on this journey that's crazy. But as we understand ourselves and we gain that confidence that we didn't have when we were little because we weren't seen or heard, what happens now when you go back into your family? Are you able to build bridges in your family? Are you able to describe yourself such that, are some people starting to understand you better as you have the courage to kind of speak what you're up to?
Well, I don't even know that that matters because
Cool.
I just get to express me. And my parents are like completely, Jen, I would just say that was one of the most fantastic ripples of flight school for me. Embracing myself so much so that or like taking the step to realize like, okay, let's try this, and like stepping into embracing, like making room for me, because then I just could love them for who they are without like needing things, from them. And everything just kind of fell into place. I'm not saying there weren't some conscious conversations, but it was never like, oh, this is who I am, or, blah, blah, blah.
See
Um,
me.
huh?
See me.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you just
Um,
were yourself, but it's almost like, don't you find that when we finally like get who we are, you just become more, it's like, oh, that's who I am. And then when we come back into the tribes that we're associated with, what happens is they're like, oh, like we see ourselves better, so they instantly, it's like, it's somehow there's a level of peace that descends on the
well, I,
room.
I can give you a very concrete example.
Cool, go ahead.
Very recently, you know, very recently, I've had a blog since I stepped away from that job. I started a blog. It was, Curious Point of View. It's on WordPress. And no, though the younger kids in my family, knew some things and some of them helped me get it set up. Definitely not the older generation. And so just a few weeks ago, my dad wanted to know how to start a blog, and so I had him look at mine, and he wrote me an email back, and he said, "I'm extremely impressed by your writing talent." But then he went on this whole thing to say, I would like to share this with the extended family, with your permission. And he said it's precisely because he knows in his body I'm not seen, because he spoke into it, and he said in the old days, families spend so much time together, and in India, we're very extended family. So it's like everybody, I'm not just talking about the nuclear family.
Sure.
And he's like, so everybody got to know each other. But he said now in modern times, we have such little interactions. People just form an impression and take that away. And so I can hear the judgments, about
Yeah, yeah.
me. And so I just thought, what a gift that not only is he alive enough to see me and so care for me, like I know he's completely in my whole corner, but that he wants to be the guide for the family on my behalf. So,
That's pretty cool.
yeah.
Even though this is your very special story, so much of what you shared today, Manisha, extends to all of our circumstances where we didn't feel seen and heard in our own way, right? And so, what I love about this is um, just in the field of mythology, they're allegories. Those allegories of our lives um, are thematic. So they transcend culture. Like there's aspects of everyone's story that transcends culture, right?
Joseph Campbell.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And so what's beautiful about this conversation is that I feel like it's a really transcendent um, allegory or metaphor for what could be whatever that your version of that life is. But just remember, eventually, and thank you, Monisha, for being such a champion of this. And it's such a privilege to have, gosh, witnessed so much of your journey. Not all of it, but I get to also witness the results. And you're the embodiment of the courage, the bravery, the tenacity, and the willingness to follow your heart's calling to, you know, being an agent of change or an agent of awakening isn't necessarily, you don't have to be Gandhi. You don't have to be Martin Luther King. You're the fact that your dad did that, you changed something that you, and then he shared it, so that changed something. Do you see what I mean? And
Yeah.
all of the bridges that you've built in your life, that people saw the before and the after of you, and that blog got sent out, it's like so cool, because within the fact that your dad was proud of you and then he sent it out, was the story of the bridge that took you from the place where that would never have happened to the place where it did happen. Like infused in that is your entire journey.
Oh my
And
God. It's so delicious. I just want to say that those two parallels, it's like bookends, right? So
yeah,
like in my 20s, I found the heart-centered courage to follow my heart, and I
yes,
suffered so many consequences and had all
yeah,
these messages. Then I gave up on myself for 20 years in a way, because I gave up on that courage,
yes,
and I still was doing the things that you're saying, but like, it was under, like all these little movements. But
yeah.
now it's like, it's so extraordinary. And it all just comes from going back and just making room for who I really am. And now it's like it's not negative consequences at all. It's just like,
No, it's all
it's
good.
fantastic. And my word this morning was
Yes,
choices.
of
And,
course.
and how now, in all the judgment that I had for myself in those 20 years, the most fantastic gift is I can really, really embrace all my choices, all my heart centered followings. I'm so grateful I made those choices.
Well, what's really interesting, I'm grateful you made some of those choices too, very selfishly. And so, and so everyone, this morning, Manisha, I woke up kind of in a bit of a funk, maybe probably feeling what's going on in the world and feeling a bunch of change for me because I want to, we're all in, well, I'm in self-examination. I know a lot of people are as well, as to how I'm going to focus more and up the game, and how can I make the deepest impact with the most efficiency using the gifts that I have, which I encourage everyone else to answer the same question for yourself. And in that space, um, this conversation has just uplifted my heart.
Oh,
So
I'm so glad.
yeah, I'm reminded of something real, something very real. And so everyone, first of all, we appreciate you sharing the Agents of Awakening interviews. Second of all, please go to Agents of Awakening and like it and follow it and come and play there and share. I'm encouraging people. Jeannie and I talked about this. Like, what if we had roving reporters? But if everyone was a roving reporter, like we went into our communities and we found all the people doing adorable, like wonderful things at the end of their driveway, all the way to people that dreamt up a way to raise money, all the way to a little kid. I just saw a little kid who raised, I don't know, like $60,000 for the NAACP or something. And it's like, there are people doing incredible, incredible things. So, and not just about what's going on in the United States. I mean, about the environment, about everything, about being kind. This is not This is not a time to be polarized in partisan stuff. This is a time to come together, and people are doing things that transcend the divide. And that's what we're looking for. We're looking for just, I made a phone call to, oh, my mother just made a phone call to her sister who she hasn't talked to for ages. That is building a bridge. That's being an agent of awakening. You know, that's what it is. It's everything from, you know, soup to nuts, as they say. So if you want to be a reporter, just claim it. Declare yourself a reporter for Agents of Awakening and go and share stories. And we'll give you props. The second thing is I'm deeply grateful for everyone we've interviewed. It just seems like such an appropriate conversation this morning to show how we're all more alike than different. And I appreciate you, Miss Monisha. And for those of you who have not yet seen the conversations between Valerie Shepard and I on Agents of Awakening about race, it really is time to get comfortable with being a little uncomfortable. Let your tree be shaken and go and listen to those conversations and be brave enough to share them. Just have the courage to share and let yourself be a bridge to something different. You'll be surprised at what people will say when you share your heart. So, everyone, any final words, Monisha? Anything you'd just like to, you know, in a minute or less kind of thing?
I'm just going to speak into the word room. I just want to say the most important thing from a place of physicality is that when we make room for one another, we're actually making more room for all of us.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really what our soul and heart kind of thirst for.
Mm-hmm.
And we all just have to hold hands and figure this out together.
Yeah. It's like the more room in ourselves, we make room for ourselves, which requires getting to know oneself.
Right.
It's
Which is
almost
why my
like
book is called Room to Reside.
exactly. I'm going to share actually what Monisha, what I just shared on my page from Monisha onto the Agents of Awakening page, so you guys can
Oh,
read a
thank you.
little bit. Yeah. Oh well, it's definitely an Agents of Awakening post. So
Well, yeah.
yeah,
I
it is.
I will love more conversations on all of this. It's we're so fortunate that the time has come.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So everyone, if you're called to actually be inspired in your business, be inspired in your life, be inspired in your families, is not about, you know, it's really about change and empowerment of oneself. So we have a private group on Agents of Awakening, which you can join if you want to engage, ask yourself really productive questions, create a new reality for yourself and for the world around you, locally, in your family, or just in the world at large. We're having those kinds of conversations with some very smarty pants people. So, which we would love to include you. So, anyways, everyone, love you. Thanks from Agents of Awakening. Jeannie, Selda, and I give you a big hug. And Monisha, I'm giving you so you're a
Mwah.
physical hug right now, dude. So, okay, bye everyone. Have a great rest of your day.